All right, so it's about close to 1 p.m. right now. So thank you everyone for joining in today for the Critical Thinking Power Hour session. Hope you guys are doing well. Slowly the people are starting to fill up. We're expecting around 50 participants today. So we're going to just begin right about now because we have an hour today with our host, Professor Sattar Bhavani. So for those of you who may not have read the introductory email that we sent, Professor Sattar is the CEO of the Disruptive Leadership Institute, as well as the Center for Executive Education. He's also an award-winning C-suite certified master executive coach and a facilitator. He has over 30 years of international business management experience across various regions around the world, and 20 years of which in executive coaching, group facilitation, such as this, and as well as leadership training and training with global management consulting firms. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Professor Sattar. Thank you so much for taking the time today to facilitate this session. And welcome.
Thank you so much, Sharavana. A very good afternoon to each and every one of you. Welcome to this Power Hour learning session. And topic today, we're going to talk about developing critical thinking for success, in the workplace, which is really relevant in light of the disruptive workplace that we have today due to the digital transformation coupled with the pandemic that we are experiencing still ongoing, and why this skill is going to be the number one of the top 5 has been consistently rated as the most important leadership and personal effectiveness skill to be able to succeed in the what we call the next normal or the new normal. Okay, so now I would like to start with a quickly very simple question, a quiz. The quite a number of you, more than I think 40 or 50. So we talk about critical thinking. Many people have a different understanding. So I'm going to start with a very simple question. What do you think is the difference between thinking critically and critical thinking? So for those of you who want to answer and get on your microphone or your video, speak up, or those of you who are prefer to type your answer in the chat box, please do so, and Sharavana will help me to read out. Come on. So you got 1 minute. Anyone would like to try it out? Wan Ling, Yusafat. I'm looking at those names right at the top. So, sorry. Let me see. Yeah. Joyce. Anyone? Reza, come on. Vincent.
So yeah, just type in your answers, or you can speak up just by opening your unmuting video on or off, up to you. It is quite a tough question though.
Yeah. Well, later when you see the answers, it's not that, but it's about thinking the way you think. And so for anyone, put the answer on the chat box? Anyone, no?
Not yet on the chat box. I think they're struggling as much as I am.
Okay, then it's quite common when I do this worldwide. I ask this question. So people know.
Sorry, there's an answer that came up.
Yeah.
Saying thinking before and after.
Oh, thinking before and after. So which one is before and which one is after? So, okay, we talk about the difference, the main difference that critical thinking is a skill that can be developed, okay? And that is very important. So we need to develop the skill, or what we call the ability, to look at a situation, to look at a problem that we face at work or even in our personal life at home. And how do we then understand that problem or the issue from a multiple perspective? Okay, we have to remove the bias. We need to understand the facts from the opinion and assumption that people put forward. And this is really, really important in today's context because we talk about the fake news, social media, In Singapore, that's why we have the POFMA, the act which, basically the government reserves the right to take action if people will propagate, fake news on social media. And when we receive such news or such information, we need to think critically. Okay, remember, now I use the word think critically about the statement. So first of all, critical thinking is a skill. You can develop, you can learn, is a acquired skill, and you can develop the ability to think critically through a process. So when you talk about thinking critically, you're talking about using critical thinking as a skill through a series of activities or action before you draw conclusion as to whether this is real, this is factual, or this is an assumption that somebody made, or it could be a false statement. So let me just be very clear. What is important is the skill, because the skill is something that you demonstrate, you're able to use to discern the information, whether it's fact or a false statement. Now, later I will be showing you to think critically the process. Some of you probably have seen, or I hope all of you have viewed the video called the RED model, the 4-minute video that I sent, that illustrate the thinking critically. And that's a gold standard using the RED model. And to think critically, number one, you must think logically with clarity and precision. It's not easy because we all get what we call a lot of this distraction. We have at times too much information, data in front of us. So how do we think logically? Then followed by an approach that is very logical and accurate. So we need to be able to be aware of what we call our confirmation bias. Sometimes we tend to draw a conclusion, or we tend to believe something that we have past experience, or something that we personally been through before, or we like about a particular situation, or we have a favorable experience. So we tend to draw conclusion from the past. So sometimes that may not be optimal. And I will talk about that, some example later. And lastly, it's important when you think critically, because there's so much data, and in today, knowledge-driven information technology, because there's so much information that you come across, you need to be able to only review those information that is relevant, that is important to you because you are trying to solve a particular problem or a challenge in front of you. So we use critical thinking largely in what we call the problem solving and decision making process on a day-to-day. All of us need to solve problem. All of us need to make decision, or most of us need to make decision as to which option would be the best way to solve the problem. And again, later when I talk about some example, give you an idea about what's happening in the pandemic, right now ongoing the pandemic, some of the challenges that we have to decide, some of the issues that we need to make. And that's why it's important more than ever in the post-pandemic era, the next 3 to 5 years, critical thinking is going to become very important. It has been important for a long time as the #1 skill. 10 years ago, critical thinking has been identified as the #1 skill for leadership, future leaders, and also for individual, contributor, for anyone at the workplace to be able to look at problem and solving problem. So that has been all along, as I said, for the last 11 years, it has been. And WEF, the World Economic Forum, in the 2016 report, saying that critical thinking skills is one of the top 10 skills that you must have by 2020, was last year. Then in 2018 report, It says that by next year, 2022, critical thinking is one of the human skills. Now, what do you mean by that? Because we deal with robots. In many workplaces today, whether manufacturing, whether you are talking about retail or looking at many of the industry are leveraging, even banking, for example, leveraging on AI, artificial intelligence, algorithm to look at consumer decision-making processes and so forth, or for customer profiling. And at times we depend too much on the advanced technology, which is fine, but we must be able to know and be able to use our own ability to think, to have the creative problem solving, and to be able to innovate. When you're trying to solve customer problem, you need to innovate. Critical thinking comes to a very important skill that all of us need to be able to demonstrate. And this has been in my book. Of course, you can see the reference there, where I talk about a lot about the critical thinking and what we call resilience. Resilience, complex problem solving. When we have issues that's very tough, then we need to quickly bounce. Sometimes we fail, and failure is fine, or we call it experimentation. So in the new normal, in the post-pandemic, in the digital transformation or the digital-driven workplace, one of the very important elements that we need to start be familiar with, be very comfortable with, is experimentation, in trying out different things, different alternative solutions, which may not be optimal, but give us the opportunity to try out different set of action, hopefully would allow you to learn, unlearn and relearn. That's called learning agility, to be able to find a solution to the problem. So it's a process that require critical thinking in the next 20, 30 years. Is going to be far much more important as the workplace transform into what we call the future of work, where technology is going to drive every single work processes. And WEF published last year, late last year, October 21st, I believe, they published the latest report. And they said that by 2025, all 50% of employees need to reskill or upskill depending on the role. And if you look at the top 10 skills, critical thinking number 4, and critical thinking is a problem-solving skill. So, this is very important. You look at analytical thinking, innovation, yeah. Then you have look at number 3, number 4, and number 5. So if you look at the top 5, 4 of the most important skills by 2025, where we expect the post-pandemic to be, well, hopefully the new normal would become the normal. In other words, that's how we can expect the workplace to transform, where we not only use technology, is going to be important element, is enabler. So I always advise CEOs, senior leaders, HR, the mantra of PPT, putting people before process and technology. So in the post-pandemic era, in the digital transformation workplace, critical thinking, analytical thinking, complex problem solving, creativity will continue in the next 4 to 5 years, is going to be the key element. So today I'm going to talk about how we do it. We know it. So a lot of companies, a lot of people have what's called the knowing, doing, get. What do you mean by that? Meaning that many of the business leaders that I've spoken to, one of the biggest challenge is, how do we look at problem and understand that, or we talk about critical thinking as important, but there is a suite of other skills. So critical thinking is one. Critical thinking, we talk about, you must have the ability to think strategically, strategic thinking, creative, look at different brainstorming and do different solution, problem solving, making. But today, the latest suite of competency in our research, we have found that not only critical thinking, but you need to use critical thinking complemented with others like emotional, social intelligence, empathy, focus of attention, what we call the being present. How do we connect the dots? So all these keys called cognitive readiness refers to mental, which is your critical thinking, and your emotional. Because sometimes you look at a problem, we need to have empathy to customer issues, our internal or external customer. Empathy is one of the most important. Sorry, somebody's saying something.
Oh, I think it was just unmuted and they muted themselves.
Can we mute everybody except me, Sharavana?
Sure, I'll do that.
Okay, so the things about emotional aspect is empathy. So empathy, besides critical thinking, the second most important skill that you need to develop is empathy. For customer, empathy for colleague. As we work, robot doesn't have that. So that's where we cannot be 100% replace a robot. Some of the jobs, yes, for the low end, low value added job, where the repetitive tasks, you can be replaced. But many of the jobs and many of the roles, you find that you still need the element of the human element, the interpersonal relationship. So this is where we find critical thinking and emotion and social intelligence very important. Now, but why cognitive readiness? One of the things about cognitive readiness, if you look at what is happening over the last 5 years, there have been, okay, first one, the 9/11, we look at 9/11, people say, oh, nobody believe. And I was in the office that morning, it was 9 a.m. Singapore time. I was having a meeting with my team. And when that happened, when I got a message from my wife, telling me, oh, there is, we have there is a terrorist attack in New York. And, it's a terrorist attack. Well, it is quite common, because terrorist attack can be even, in Oklahoma, you have the Oklahoma bombing. But this time when they say that the attack is a plane hitting the Twin Tower, so many people say, oh, it's unprecedented. Actually, when we look and there's a commission report, we look and study, it is to be expected. There have been a lot of data, a lot of information that falls to the intelligence community. Now we know that the intelligence community did not communicate. So between the US intelligence, the foreign intelligence, because there's a lack of thinking. When they have the data, they have the information, the analysts, the CIA, FBI, NSA, all the intelligence community in the US and working with their foreign counterpart, they do not demonstrate a very high level of critical thinking. And sometimes we take things for granted. Oh, you've seen this before, we had this chatter. So the question is it really a black swan event? Now, what do you mean by black swan event? Black swan event is when those very unforeseen, unprecedented, never to be expected, that could change the world permanently or change the way we view the world. So why black swan? Because black swan are very rare. And you can find them, of course, in Australia, Melbourne. It is where today it's quite common, but we're talking about back in the 1900s, early 1900s, we don't see many of this. So it's very rare, or sometimes you don't, it's unexpected. In Singapore, for today, you go to Botanical Garden and see the black swan. So the question is, people always say like the Brexit, oh, nobody believes that UK is going to be out of Brexit. No one. And, you know, nobody expects that. That it's very close, of course, 50 point something percent, but nobody expects that the UK to be out. And of course, Donald Trump, nobody believes that Donald Trump is going to be the US president, but everybody bet on Hillary Clinton. My point is, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised of Brexit. I'm not surprised 9/11 and Donald Trump, because if you look at the data, look at the information, and you need to think critically, where are the unknowns? Where the question you need to ask, a series of questions, and to allow you to broaden your thinking. So that's why I'm saying that critical thinking is important, but you need to expand into cognitive readiness by using your intuition, using your empathy, using your ability to look at diverse information and to be able to then make a conclusion. So I've given you the read up. There is one article, very interesting, called The Mentally Prepared Leader, Cognitive Readiness, a Higher Level Critical Thinking. That article is given to you as a handout. Please read that. That's and the lady who wrote it, my colleague in US, both Bonnie and Sale Schwartz. Sale Schwartz is a scientist from NASA. She was also the DOD, Department of Defense, helping the US Department of Defense in terms of solving, a complex problem, warfare. Yeah. So she's a scientist and is a great lady, my colleague, and she wrote this article and talking about how we can use cognitive readiness, these 7 competencies: method recognition, attention control, sense making, intuition, problem solving, adaptability or agility, and communication. And you have a lot of examples in the article. Please take some time to read if you have not read the article as part of the handout or pre-work. Okay, so what I want to focus on, number 5. Okay, number 5 is creative critical thinking, and how do you use critical thinking and to be able to help you to make decisions. So I'm going to now ask you another question. So we talked about the new normal, as I said, in 2025. Many research I just published yesterday. It will be out probably next week. If you like to have the white paper, you can contact me on LinkedIn. I just finished writing up, so my team in the US is polishing up about the new normal. What are some of the actions that we can take to prepare so that we are able to effectively lead the team? It's for the leaders, of course. I'm talking about leadership, leadership role in leading in the new normal. And it's going to be very important. Many of the problems that we can see in the new normal require critical thinking and empathy both. And also it requires us to be able to demonstrate, okay, what we call the cognitive readiness. So I'm going to ask you one more time. So why is this so important? What do you see in your view, the post-pandemic? And by next year, the global economy, a lot of countries are opening up slowly. Europe has opened up, the US very soon, and then you're going to see Asia, Indonesia, Thailand, all are trying to open up by December, Malaysia. So you can see 2022 is the beginning of the new normal, but it's not certain as to whether the pandemic, the resurgence because of the mutation, because of the Delta Plus, the Mu, the Lambda, and the many other variations that are coming out, the mutation, how was it going to, and the vaccine seems to be no longer effective. So you need a booster and so forth. So there's a risk. There's a risk that you look at all the information that's coming out from WHO, CDC, what is happening is that there would possibly be a prolonged pandemic. However, there is now a need to balance. So government, global institution, worldwide agree that there has to be a balance between public health and economy, and you cannot simply close the businesses for for too long, and many companies has gone past worldwide. Many industry are decimated. Look at, of course, the worst is the airline, the what we call the travel tourism. They are worse, but many government, many institutions, IMF, World Bank, WTO, and many other institutions agrees that there is a need to start reopening to ensure that trade and the global economy can be restarted. And that's why we need to think now to prepare. So my question is this: why is it so important? Why do you think critical thinking is so important in the post-pandemic era? Anyone?
Is it because of the information overload? I mean, that's my answer. The others can also chime in.
Yeah, sure, right. Yeah, absolutely. That's one, information overload, because you can see a lot of things, more and more information. But the good news to resolve that, Sharavan, we have what we call data analytics. We have software, knowledge management software, and which will help us to, and because of AI, artificial intelligence, and also machine learning, which would allow us to discern between the good, reliable information, relevant information, and those who are not. So technology is there. Yes, you're right, because of too much information, but that can be resolved or helped by technology. But what is important? What is it that we need to face when we are talking about in the post-pandemic? What is the most important thing? Besides the information, what else are we going to do? We going to deal with new type of worker. We call it the gig economy. You have the working more and more the younger workforce. We have different expected Gen Z, for example, the latest group. Then you have Gen Alpha, and then you have the group that's coming, what we call the contingency workforce. Okay, so in other words, if you are working in an organization dealing with contractors, because a lot of solutions, a lot of customer services would be now being offered, not by yourself, by your organization, but with collaboration with partners. Okay, they'll be what we call the contingent workforce, either they are temporary or outsourcing, So do we need to know, because these are dealing with people who are not really working for you, but they are supporting. So the way you deal, the way you trying to understand some of the issues require you to be able to demonstrate that ability to be adaptive, resilient, and how to solve problems quickly, and how to be able to, as I said, it's very important when you have too much information, and when you have even reliable information, you need to choose between alternative action. So you need to think critically, which of this option would be the optimal solution. And for every decision, there is a risk factor. So you need to evaluate, you need to look at what we call the organization strategy. So make sure that your decision, whatever decision that you're going to take to solve the problem, is aligned to your organization strategy. So it's not simply about just making a decision. Yes, I know, I faced this before. I use the cheapest, or this guy, I work with him, I know, he's reliable. So you need to look at the information, even you have worked with them before. We need to be, if you think they are good, you need to be aware of what we call confirmation bias. Because there will be a lot of these new problems coming in the post-pandemic. Is a lot of things are unknown in terms of how things are going to evolve, both internally within your organization and also your customers. And it has to be more innovative and customer driven. So the post-pandemic, what is going to happen? The customer is back to number one, the king. So you're going to look at customer centricity. And when you use digital transformation, customer centricity is the core, the innovative. And when I talk about innovation, okay, it's not necessarily invention. Nothing. Innovation basically means you may have an existing product. How do you develop new application? Or you have a solution that you think potentially could, being applied in one situation, and you look at new ways of applying that solution, or new customers that will require that solution. So the innovative customer centricity mindset is dominant in their new normal. Why? One of the things that, as I mentioned earlier, we need to look at problems, and not only leadership, okay? Now, leadership, of course, the more research has shown, the higher you are, if you are the, of course, the CEO, the senior management, the C-suite, this is a most critical skill, because you're going to face with a lot of challenges from the board, from the shareholders or from the stockholders, all the stakeholders demand. So you need to make decisions, and you need to look at alternatives from senior management. So the higher you are, so if you are able to develop this, you can make good decisions, or the outcome would be good. So developing a critical thinking skills for leadership is paramount, is the most important skill in the context of the fourth industrial revolution, where we talk about the technology being an enabler in everything that we do. Of course, that's for leadership now. But what about most of us, the day-to-day, your individual, all of us? Yes, we have to, because even you are at a supervisory level, or even as an individual contributor, or you working with colleagues, there will be situations where, in a team meeting, situation where you are trying to solve a customer problem, or a department or division, where you have multifunctional team coming together to solve a problem. You need to demonstrate critical thinking, because you cannot simply accept those who what we call sometimes when we look at customer problem, marketing seems to have a greater say sometimes. So we need to be able, if you're from the back end, not the front customer interfacing, you need to be able to share your problem, share your point of view. So let me be very clear, critical thinking does not, I repeat, does not what we call the limit to only the limited to only the leadership, but it's for everyone in the organization. So bear in mind. I like to share this point, a quote. I love this quote by Einstein. The importance of critical thinking. He says that if I have an hour to solve a problem, I will spend 55 minutes thinking about a problem and only 5 minutes thinking of the solution. So if you look at the statement, it tells you that critical thinking, the process, thinking critically, is what he means. The example earlier, talking about critical thinking and thinking critically. This is what thinking critically. Because before you come to a decision to solve the problem, which is the easier part, the more important is how do you go about evaluating, reviewing the problem, and looking at, different options through brainstorming, and then choose one of them as your action to solve the problem. The danger is that some people, they will look at the problem and it may seem similar to the past experience, so they will use the same. And there's a saying, for someone who has a hammer, a nail, I can't remember the saying that, every nail, you tend to see an issue and you look at it with a silo mentality. You need to broaden your horizon. And that's why by having different people sitting down together give you very different perspective. And now I'm going to talk about the model that I have asked you to watch the video. So the model worldwide, the #1 model that is being used, this model is used in NASA, the National Aeronautics Space Administration in US, the CIA, when it was looking at solving problem, how to solve problem. They use another model also called the Phoenix checklist, which is more advanced. I'm not going to talk about it. It's more for senior leadership. It's about 70 questions you need to go through to be able to solve the problem. So, but this is the fundamental. This is the backbone of many advanced critical thinking methodology, because it's the core. Okay, so when we talk about strategic thinking, the outside hub. Okay, because we're all leaders. We talk about strategy, we vision, mission, strategy. Every year we do our 3-year plan or 5-year plan. So we need to have strategic thinking. Yes, important. We need to look at a long-term horizon. Then, as a business leader, department, supervisor, or HOD, we need to then solve a problem. We look at the issue that we're facing, then we need to make a decision, and then we need to implement and monitor. So the second circle. Now, but to do all the outer circle, strategic thinking and problem solving, decision making, planning, and implementation, you cannot get it right, or you cannot do it optimally or very successfully without having the ability to use the RED model as your critical thinking tool. Now, what do I mean by that? Because remember, if you got the RED right, as you have seen the video, you would be able to solve short-term, long-term, tactical problem easily. So in the video, which we were not going to show, so I give you pre-work, the examples given is very diverse. We look at the workplace. One of the issues that people tend to forget, so when they solve problem, as I said, they tend to rely on past experience. But in the video, it shows you that we need to really evaluate the problem. We cannot simply use the same method or the symptom or the problem may look the same, but the solution that will be required may be different. Maybe the same, may not be. I'm not saying it may not be, but it may be effective, but it also may require a different approach. So that's why in the video, I asked you to look at it. Is there anyone got any question? If you have seen the video, any comment? If not, please go through that. I will be giving you the PDF version of the material. Sharavana can send to you later after the workshop. You can go and click on the link there, okay, and watch the video again, because it's very important. And the video talk about the 3 level, 3 phase, the R, the E, and the D. And I've given you also the handout, the pre-work, very detailed on how to use the model. Please read. If you have not read, that's why I'm giving you pre-work so that you can read and ask questions. But you have not, never mind. I'm going to explain now that very important how to use it. Okay. So number one, when you have a problem, and you are trying to solve a problem. So you are trying to brainstorm, coming together, you have a team, or sometimes you're dealing with customer, right? Customer will tell you, okay, I have this problem or I have this issue with your product or your software or with your services. It's not well tested. So they'll make wild statement, and sometimes they make statement which may sound really believable, like as though and some people, they have the gift of reframing the message as though it looks like fact. So you need to be very careful. So one of the questions that you always need to ask, okay, how do you come about? For example, one of the statement earlier I made, the statement I said that many of the global organization, IMF, WTO, the ILO, World Bank, all looking at 2022 as the beginning of the new normal. So one of the questions you may want to ask, what made this organization coming up with this projection? What assumptions? So sometimes people make assumptions because of information they receive, but they do not validate. I repeat, do not validate. Where is the authenticity? Is it reliable? What proof do you have? The research, okay, how big, the research data. So when we talk about published data, some of the, when we look at the pandemic, the mutation, when in my book, I talk about in March last year, when the Wuhan lockdown on 26 January 2020, by March, 2 months later, in end of March, they found 33 mutation in China, the scientists, and they publish it because at that time, some of the scientists are part of a global network of researchers. And as far back as March, even before the circuit breaker in Singapore, before the lockdown, it's 2 months after Wuhan, there was 33 mutation of COVID-19, or at that time they call it nCoV-2 SARS, because it's not, COVID-19 only came in April when the WHO decided to name, the virus, give a name to the virus, COVID-19. And what is interesting, that when we talk about mutation, about Delta today, 90% of the infection in many of the countries in the world is because of the Delta variant. So question is, where do these people get the information? How reliable it is? So when you're trying to solve problem, when you listen to vendor, or when you listen to news, or when you receive information from supplier, from your overseas partners and so forth, you need to ask questions and ensure that the information that you are depending upon to make a decision are effectively reliable. Now, how do you do that? So there are ways. For example, is through looking at the person, the person giving and the person will rely on the third party. Sometimes we rely on reports, or we rely on government data. So you can question, so how reliable? What is the sampling size? How do we know? Has it been tested elsewhere? Where do we want to focus? So you need to continue to ask those questions to ensure that that statement or information that you're going to rely upon to make a decision later is actually factual, is actually reliable. And because you then can put up a business case and using those information to solve your problem. So that's number one. So recognizing assumption is very important, the first step. So don't just simply accept statement made by one party. Like for example, in Singapore right now, the MTF, the Ministerial Task Force, because of now we just been announced yesterday or the day before about extension for another month. So people are questioning why, on what basis, how things going to get better, how different it's going to be. So there are a lot of questions because the information that is being provided to the public is not being made clear, or the basis of the decision of the Ministerial Task Force or the Ministry of Health. So a lot of questions on social media, even the decision of Singapore to open up in the South China Morning Post yesterday, there was an article that China was looking at Singapore actually as a model. Now they're saying, look, our way of, treating the pandemic as endemic and looking what's happening right now, that's not the approach to take. And the CDC in US have rated Singapore level 4 as up the risk level 4 is the worst. They do not recommend anyone to come to Singapore. So why do they make a statement? Why do CDC? It's very, 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 it's not a easy thing for CDC to make that, advisory. So, but we, for me, for example, I have clients, who travel, and we do business. So who wants to come to Singapore, and because of business and so forth, and people are questioning, hey, how reliable is this information? And that's the right thing to do, because we need to ensure whatever information that comes to us, we need to validate and authenticate, or we need to challenge the reliability. Okay, assuming is okay. Assuming that the information that you get is factual, okay? It's factual. So the question now is argument put forward, the business case put forward. Okay, we have option A, option B, option C. So the next question, because usually this process can be very simple, can be 5-minute process. I mean, depend on the nature. If you're talking about, okay, deciding on a stationary vendor, or deciding on a problem that will not have a strategic impact on the organization, it can be 5 minutes, 1 hour. But if you're talking about huge investment, deciding whether to invest in, a mainframe, or deciding to invest in new robot, for the software for the whole organization, for example, those situations, you need to critically look at each option, each argument being presented, each alternative. And to do that, you need to go back to the underlying supporting evidence. Now, at this stage, we can say that information has been evaluated. Remember, recognizing assumption, okay, it's not an opinion, it's a factual, it's not just hearsay, there is supporting evidence. So the next stage, when you want to solve the problem, you think about, hey, what about the quality? How accurate? It is factual, it is from the government, but the next question you need to ask is the quality. Reliability, to the extent we need to be mindful. This is where the issue of confession bias, sometimes our emotional, because we look at a situation. Oh yes, one of the let me tell you, one of my clients, I wouldn't mention, but have this. It's perception, that anything that comes from China, okay, we need to be very critical and look at the quality of the part, quality of the product, even food and so forth. We have to, even if you have the stamp of approval, you have a company like Nestle or company like Procter & Gamble, okay, they have a plant in China. Now, even the brand is global, but is made in China. So my friend had this is a client actually, told me, I'd be any food product that come from China, he would, he believed that there has been instances of, a level of mercury, arsenic, and all these things inside. So he will be very suspicious. And he has this confirmation bias. What happened is anything when you want to make a decision, if I want to choose a supplier which provide product from China, I would be very, very careful that he uses emotion because of his past experience, because of his information that he has seen that from China, the Chinese government, sometimes is the complacency or the the lax in the rule and so forth. So that affects. So sometimes we need to be careful, although our past experience, or we may have unpleasant experience for a particular vendor, country, supplier. We must not allow that to cloud our judgment, because each situation, each vendor, each supplier will have different good manufacturing practices, good, the ISO quality. So you need to go deeper and look at the report, look at the supplier background. So don't make decisions just because of the past. So that's critical thinking number 2. Okay. So the last one is the easiest. So number 1, you look at recognizing assumption. Is it fact or is it a false statement? Or sometimes it's not, it's an opinion expressed by someone. The way he presented is so charismatic. He presented that it come across as, authentic. But that's why you ask questions, right? So you do the first one, recognizing assumption. Second one, you have different alternatives, and you need to be able to evaluate the argument for each option or each business case or each alternative. And then by evaluating the quality of the evidence or the supporting evidence and looking at the quality of the report submitted by the vendor and so forth, and then you remove the emotional part of the confirmation bias. Because sometimes we know the vendor very well. Okay, I work with you, I know you, so I just accept whatever you say is gospel truth. So that should not be the way. So once you have done the first 2 steps correctly, the last one, you want to draw conclusion. Okay, we have this problem with the customer and we need to be able to decide on the solution. Okay, we look at A, B, C. C seems to be the one that is factual, seems to have the greater supporting evidence that is most reliable. And therefore, because of this, we will go and proceed with C or vendor C or solution C. So the last phase is easiest, because if you do the first 2, the first one is the toughest. For the first one, where critical thinking is fundamental. You need to look, is it a fact or opinion? What is the available evidence? The second one is you go deeper into the quality of evidence of different alternatives. And then the last phase, if you do the first 2 phases, is it critical thinking basically means, okay, I will go with option D. Now, it can be something internal. For example, you need to decide whether do we offer, we want to look at what would be the best approach to offer staff, employee benefits, So now it's very common. We look at the problem is how to motivate, you have this issue right now. Many companies have this issue of mental wellness. One of my research globally looking at the challenges of the post-pandemic. How do we ensure the mental well-being, employee well-being, mental wellness, mental health are being taken care now? Because now it's important to prepare them for the post-pandemic, because by the time you don't take care of them now, many of them in US, many people have left the organization because they cannot no longer. So their turnover rate is very high. So then you have the facts. The R is recognizing, so let me go back to give you an example. So I was giving an example about employee flexi system. So recognizing assumption, okay, is this statement about mental health, employee well-being, is it factual? Worldwide, look at the data, worldwide, all Singapore. And then what can we offer? Do we give them time off, or do we give them more leave, or do we provide on-site EAP, employee assistance program? So there are different alternatives, right? Then HR or the business leader, they have to look at each alternative. Which one is the most effective? Which one is suitable for our business? We cannot rely on other business with different business or different industry may require different, because the nature of the work may be different, and therefore they require different solutions. So the drawing conclusion, this example I just gave you of employee deciding on employee mental health, how to offer solution. You can use the same model, and can be also customer problem, any problem, but this is the world best for 80 years. We call it the gold standard. Okay, Watson-Glaser. This is based on the Watson-Glaser model, which is the gold standard of how to think critically. There's a link there, a book, very good book called the Critical Thinking. I think I've given you the summary in a handout. You can look at that, the white paper. Read that white paper. Okay, so with that note, let me just conclude. So exactly 1:59. So let me conclude by saying this. One of the biggest challenge, people look at a problem and they say, okay, I seen this, I know this problem. Oh, I would no. So in the post-pandemic, in the new normal or next normal, what our role is to be able to see what no one has yet to see in the problem, or what our competitor has not seen the opportunity, but to think, not only see, but to think about what nobody has thought about, what everybody sees. So everybody see the pandemic. Your competitor will see the same problem. But all of us are seeing what's happening in the how the pandemic is disrupting lives, livelihood, problem, to your customers and so forth. The question is, the way you can make a difference for each and every one of you at 𝐂𝐿 is to think what no one has thought about. In other words, everybody see the same problem, they see the same data, they see the same report. Your role is to think using critical thinking and thinking critically to be able to solve the problem, because nobody else is looking at it. Nobody else challenging the quality of information. Nobody else look at the validity of the evidence. Nobody look at the business case in depth by evaluating using the RAD and then make the solution. So this is my advice to you from now onwards. Whenever you face a problem, whenever you face, and I've been coaching people, on this skill for 25 years. And one of the biggest problems, people tend to be complacent. They tend to rely on past experience. They will rely on others, people that they trust. So it's not about, for example, we trust your boss. Okay, my colleague, I know very well, I trust. No, it's not about whether you trust the source. Yeah, that's number one, but you need to question, because your boss or your colleague who have the information may overlook the fact that that information is not reliable. So you need to go and do your due diligence. So you need to think critically to be able to evaluate how effective it is and then make a decision. Okay. So what I've decided to give you a lot of resources. Besides the white paper, there are a lot of articles. So the links all, or you can go to my website, 𝐶E-Global, all of them are there. But anyway, you will receive this PDF of the presentation slide. You can click on the link and go in, connect me on link. Every week I publish articles on personal effective on leadership. Next week will be on the post-pandemic. What we can do, the white paper. And then you can look at some of the other white paper articles and so forth to help you to make decisions, to be a better leader, to be a better worker, to be better personal, your personal effectiveness. And there's a lot of videos. We have about 300 videos. It's complimentary. You can go in and read and also view them, and read those articles. So with that note, I will end here and I hand back to Sharavana. So any questions from anyone? So I'll be more than pleased to answer.
Thank you, Professor Sattar. Thanks for the insightful session and sharing the RED model, which is very critical moving forward into the next year and the many years that are coming forward for us. Any of you, if you guys have any questions, you can ask Professor Sattar. Maybe just you can stay for 5 minutes if you want to ask. Otherwise, I hope the session was useful and insightful for you as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Happy weekend to all of you guys. Yeah, so I guess that's about it on my end as well.
Okay, there's no question. So I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity, and I really, Anand and Sharavana, I'm not sure Anand is here, I didn't see him, but thank you for this opportunity, and I hope, as I said, the most important is to apply what we have learned, and it's very important to ensure that practice it. It's about practice, 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 because you have to develop and become familiar with the technique. It's the only way is to practice it. Yeah,
exactly. It's a soft skill, right?
Yeah, exactly. And because this is not in class, so it's virtual, but it's just as important. Read the material and more to come. If you want a dialogue with me, I'll be delighted to continue the dialogue. So I want to say thank you. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Safe weekend for those in Singapore. You've been advised not to go out socially, so be careful. Be mindful. So with that note, Sharavana, okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Sattar.
The best.
Okay. You have a wonderful weekend as well. Thanks everyone for taking the time today.
Bye-bye.
All right.
God bless.
Take care. Bye.